Good morning, everyone. Flossie and Mouse and Bella are ready to go and take a look at the garden with us. This is the herb spiral. It's one of the things that brings me the greatest joys. Probably good that it's right in front of the front door. It kind of sets my priorities for the day. Let's see how busy everyone is. It gives me motivation to get things done and to enjoy the beauty around me. Here's the holy basil. Not sure here why nothing is. Ah, there we go. I think I just have to really focus in. Oh, we got something close up here. This guy. Oh, look at you. Just takes a moment for it to get sharp, I guess. You'll have to bear with me. I'm learning. And I apologize for any wiggling. I have a device around my neck that's holding this camera, which is actually an iPhone, just below eye level, in the hopes of allowing you to see the world through my eyes and not just through a third-party perspective. It is October, I want to say 14th, something like that. Yeah, October 14th, 2019. I am located in Raleigh, well, outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is my property, 2 acres, just over 2 acres. And my project is called the Earthius project. Earthius, the suffix ius indicates in Latin belonging to, or coming from, or being derived from, or originating from. But most meaningful to me is belonging to. And so Earthius, of course I made that up, but by adding the suffix, I'm trying to bring the message that this project, these 2 acres here, are not mine. And although they bear the footprints of many destructive humans, this land is not mine. I may own a deed, a piece of paper that says it is, but it is not mine. It is everything here, all life, all rock, all minerals, all the life that I have introduced, or that I haven't even introduced it, I have enticed it to stay, is of the earth, belongs to Mother Earth, belongs to something much greater than myself. In fact, we cannot overlook or overstate that I, too, am of this earth. I am an earthling. These are all earthlings. We do not own each other. We do not have a right to destroy each other or to manipulate each other for our own means. That's not to say we don't derive benefits from each other. In fact, that is one of the beauties, one of the beautiful things about Earth. We all benefit from each other's well-being. These orange butterflies you see primarily here, they are, I forget the full name, but Frutilla butterflies. They're rather striking looking caterpillar stage, decimated the passion flower vine over there that was growing over there. However, they did not eat the fruit, they did not affect the fruit. They fed on the leaves for about 2 weeks. I saw them in various stages. And I did not feel that it was appropriate to do anything about it. And as a reward, I have been gifted this amazing, wondrous theater. Of course I have other butterflies here too, but right now these guys are dominating because they all went through their metamorphosis only a couple of weeks ago, quite late in the season, which is typical for them. I shall sit here for a moment. Hopefully the splashing of the waterfall does not take away from the big ants. Sorry about the wiggling, but I got a bunch of ants on my foot, so I will need to stood still too long, probably in an ant pile. Sorry, I have to get them off this shoe before I put it back on. Make sure there's no active ants on it. They did get me. I feel it. A couple of them. At this point, ant bites, although they are one of the more annoying ones, don't really bother me too much in the long run because I've been bitten so much. I tend to stand still and stare at the wondrous things going on and forget where I'm standing or don't pay attention where I'm standing. And then I end up this guy back up. And I know exactly who the culprit is. He keeps knocking that down, all of it. And that would be my dog, Bella, the Black Cocker Spaniel. She likes to come and drink and snuffle around looking for frogs right here in this spot. And so she inevitably knocks everything off. There is a sizable pond underneath all of that. About 8 by 4. You can look on the website to see some before pictures. I'll upload some more. Oh, somebody's over there. Making her way in. Hi, Flossie. Yeah? You want to be the star? Hi, baby. You gonna take a drink? Yep, there we go. Look at that. And the reason she can do that is because I don't put chemicals in this water. I don't have a liner, which may leach anything into the water. And I really don't regulate this water except to add a little bit to it if we've had a long period of drought and a lot has evaporated. Oh, here's Mr. Mouse. Hello, Mouse. He usually gets stepped on. He's our youngest, 2 years old. He thinks he's a great big lion. Hi. Oh, you want to climb in my lap? Okay. I don't know if that's going to work with this. All right, well, he's in my lap. Let's see if I can I turn this around? Someone has decided he wants to help. All right. You're going to have to get up soon, buddy. Yeah. So every morning, this is actually closer to noon, to be honest. I was not feeling well last night, so I didn't sleep till late. I took medicine and got up very late. Had my husband take my daughter to the bus. You are too cute. Yes, go on, you get down. So every morning I have a cappuccino, make my own. I'm going to try and steady this a bit. It's kind of bouncy. And then I come and look at my garden. Try to express out loud or in my heart some gratitude, because it is a good way to start the day. It's a good way to go through the day. These zinnias are all looking quite tired, but their blossoms are still spectacular in their color and in the way they're able to attract the Frutilla butterflies. Yeah, you're going to come back. Go back to that one. I have learned, wow, look at you guys. Now 2 of them. I've learned that the more grateful I am, consciously grateful, not because I have something, but because I see value in what I already have, the more grateful I am and feel, the more conscious I am of that gratitude, the more I seem to have to be grateful for. It's miraculous how that happens. These seed pods make me so happy because they represent the next generation, next year's beauty. And this one is definitely ready. That I can go hands-free, so I can do stuff in front of the camera. Each one of these will give me a multitude of these flowers. Just that thought makes me understand the incredible bounty, the incredible multitude I'm holding in this one hand. The number of plants that could come from these far exceeds what I already have in the entire garden of these zinnias. So every year I seem to have more blossoms, because what I do is I take these and I wait till they're truly loose, because then they're mature, and I simply help nature out and direct her a little bit by putting them where I want them and hoping that nature agrees with me that they do well there. You can see one did come out this year, although obviously in the shade here it's not nearly as how shall I say, as easy to germinate. Come on, ladies. Mouse! Who wants to come out and go for a walk? Musk-a-musk! Come, we'll go for a walk. Mousy! Mouse is spelled. Come on! Come on! There he is. Look at him. He's ready to go inside because he's helping his mama, my youngest daughter, who's at school. There he is, right there. You see him? Behind the pot. Come on, Mouse! Let's go for a walk! He's hoping that she's home from school, but it's not time yet. So this is probably the area on Earthius that has the most contention, the most interest, the most... Really, Bella? There must be goose poop there. Don't put it in your ears, honey. Shoo. The most potential. So what I've done here, this was a simple lawn meadow when we moved in 4 years ago. You'll see the picture on the website, in the blog, 3 Zone Gardening. This had the most boring, lifeless stretch of, oh, there he is, meadow. And my vision for it, before I even delved into the whole permaculture and then 3 Zone gardening concepts, was a pollinator meadow. I pictured this a big wildflower meadow. Had no idea what I was up against and all the mistakes I'd made to make my endeavor harder than it needed to be. But I'm finally at a point where I understand the ecology and the ethnobotany a bit better. I won't say I know I'm an expert, but I do understand a few things, thanks to Marcus Gustel, who developed a concept he calls 3 Zone gardening that I'm now promoting here in America. He's German, and that concept actually has taken over and swept the country of Germany and now France, with quite a few also in, somebody's up there running around, quite a few also in Switzerland and Austria. This is a concept that's derived loosely from permaculture principles, where I believe the starting point was. But its most interesting component actually does speak to this endeavor here. And that is what he calls the hotspot zone. So we have the production zone, which would be our garden. In permaculture, this would be zones 1 and 2, possibly 3, where we actually produce food for ourselves and our animals. And the buffer zone, which is any wilderness, but specifically hedgerow along the edge of the property that allows for wildlife or entices even wildlife to enter. And would you look at this? That entices wildlife to enter, but also not, just for forage, but also because you're providing shelter. You're providing other nature modules that they require to complete their habitat, their biome. You're creating a biome that animals, wild animals, insects recognize as a zone that is different from elsewhere. Something that provides the biodiversity they need to complete their life cycles. Sorry about wiggling around so much. I'm just learning how to handle doing stuff. I think I need to, let me see if I can bring this a little closer and then bend it this way. And now it's not quite so close, so far out and in my way. Now maybe you can see what I'm doing. I'm just getting some of these beans. When they look like this and they're nice and dry, they provide a wonderful bean that is shelf stable to save and plant next year. Now, I'm typically not a seed saver in the sense that I don't do a lot of seed saving where I'm actually storing the seeds. I do distribute them. So I can either store this, label it, go through all that hassle, or I can just throw it where I think I'd like it next year and hope for the best. And that's what I typically do. This looks pretty weedy, and it is. There's a lot of plants here that are invasives, that are non-native. Our Chinese something weed. I forgot the name of it. Oh, look at that. I brought some zinnia seeds up a couple months ago and threw them around up here. And voila, we have a zinnia, a nice fluffy one. Anyway, I'm getting off track. And I was wondering, why is it, I had spent quite a bit of money on wildflower seeds, regional native wildflower seeds. And I don't know why that's out of the ground. I must have overlooked it, or maybe it got dug up. This one too. I'll just put it back in. Looks like the red potatoes we planted a little while ago are coming up, and so are the garlic. So what I'm learning is that the invasives, the non-native invasives, are just as eager for ground soil that is high in nitrogen, that is essentially disturbed and prepared for our own productions, food production, and they are extremely happy in those types of soils. So what we're doing by increasing fertility on a place like the meadow, which I was trying to do for a couple of years before I realized what was happening, they essentially have a wonderful place to take root and spread. So the hotspot zone essentially says we need a place for, that's my neighbor, native insects to reintegrate with native, with the plants that they co-evolved with. So the question is, how do we entice native plants, native seeds that are blowing in from all directions to germinate and dominate? Well, the answer, as it is for any plant, is to know what it needs in the soil. And the ironic answer for most natives in almost every temperate region is that they need poor soil. Sandy soil that does not hold tons of water, sandy soil that, not sand, but, sandy loam that does not have an abundance of resources, abundance of nutrients. You can see here, we've got what I believe is ragweed, or a type of wart. I forgot the name of it. That has dominated this particular area. And the reason is that the septic system for this house is pumped up. The septic tank is down there. And it's pumped up the hill and then distributed via perforated pipes, 2 or 3 or 4 of them going downhill. And this seems to be one spot where a lot of it exits the pipes. And so we have an incredible amount of nitrogen and phosphates and other, excessive nutrients. Great for production zone, not good for natives. And so the goal here, which you can see happening here, is whatever energy is captured by this zone, by whatever plants are here. And this is just one way to go about doing this, needs to be mowed and removed. That's the key, removed. We do not want to mulch grass. We do not want to leave any organic matter that would build soil fertility and structure. Completely counterintuitive to all of us who have been gardening for a while, and therefore extremely hard to swallow, extremely hard to bite the bullet and do. The good news is that whatever we remove, we turn into mulch rolls. Mulch rolls are just a way of creating, I'll show you guys when we get back down. Well, I can show you right now. I see some here. This is some grass clippings that have been left behind. So I'm going to grab these guys. I hope this shows up on the video. I can't see much because the sun is so bright and my screen is so... So you take your mulch, in this case hay, grass from the field that we want to remove it from. Leaving it here means it will decompose and add nutrients to the soil, and we don't want that at the moment. We want this whole area, which is my hotspot zone, to actually degenerate, degrade, or to maintain poor soil in its poor state. And so what I'm doing here is simply rolling and rolling until I have a nice solid mulch roll that'll hold together by itself. Now, the most efficacious, the most desirable way to do this, of course, is through scything instead of mowing. Mowing does, first of all, it's a very damaging way to deal with the environment. You're killing thousands, maiming thousands of insects every time you mow a path across a meadow. So scything allows animals to escape. It is also quiet, does not require fossil fuels. And since you're not trying to scythe the entire meadow in one go, you're just going to do a little area and then do your mulch rolls. And then in a week or two, you go on and do another area. So these mulch rolls are then used, and I'll show you when we go down, as packing mulch between rows of production plants. So you're removing the energy that's been captured and processed, accumulated on the hotspot zone. Keep in mind, my hotspot zone is not at a desirable level yet, but I can bring it to that desirable level, and that would be to have soil that is so poor that only natives have an advantage, and they do. For example, this aster, this white wood aster / fleabane is native to the Northeast United States, and so I'm really happy to see that it is settled here. And you can see that in this area we do still have quite a bit of nitrogen, or we wouldn't have these pioneer plants. But it's one of the first, and it will eventually take over a lot of the real estate here. You can see there's a little bit over there. So my meadow is not anywhere near. These are the majority of these plants that you're seeing here and grasses are invasives. But already this year I'm seeing a decline in them because the soil is not being enriched. Are you hunting lizards? I'll bet you found a lizard, didn't you? Look at her. Busy, busy, busy. This is my greenhouse. Ta-da! I got a lot of biomass and almost no tomatoes out of this all summer, but I didn't mind. This was a natural consequence of the incredible heat we experienced here. We had 100-degree days with 80 to 100% humidity. And now that it's cooled off, and of course tomatoes are self-pollinating and will not pollinate over 85, 90 degrees. And it was quite often well over 100, 110 degrees in here, despite a shade cloth that I put on. So this guy's almost ready to go. I might give him, actually he's soft enough. I'm gonna go ahead and pull him. I've learned not to wait till they're completely ripe, because once they get to a certain stage, they become very inviting for pests to eat. But what I didn't mind was that these guys are all going to be producing throughout the winter. So in this greenhouse, I have green beans, cucumbers, even cantaloupe growing in vines. I have some miniature peppers. Those are also pretty ready. If I wait too much longer, they're going to be eaten by grasshoppers, of which we have a lot this year. Something was out of balance. Anyway, I digress. I wanted to finish my thought about the meadow. So the meadow is, the goal for the meadow is to create a completely native environment, habitat for native plants, which in turn attracts native insects and native wildlife, because we are in an insect extinction event. It's been happening for the past 30 years, but it's been happening exponentially. In other words, it started out so slowly we didn't notice it. And now, over the last few years, we are finding shocking results when we gauge the data out in the field. You can read about it in my article, 3-Zone Gardening. So creating an environment for native insects by creating native habitat, which of course the two co-evolved, and therefore they thrive in conditions where they can mingle, intermesh, lock together, create countless symbiotic relationships. This isn't just so that I can have bees and other pollinators for my production zone, whether it's my kitchen garden or my orchard up there. This goes far beyond that, obviously. This is a matter of survival for the human race. We cannot survive without the insects. I know that sounds radical, but it's true. And it's shocking how far down that road we've gone. Allowed industry, politicians, and capitalism to take us down that road. And it's definitely time to do something about it. So some people, they go and they do, Extinction Rebellion. They find ways to influence from the top down, which is extremely admirable. Myself, I'm starting to get involved in those types of things. But on an individual level, far more important than not buying plastic, or not that these things aren't important. I applaud everyone who does, who follows lifestyle changes that lead towards zero waste. It's a huge accomplishment on an individual level, but far more impactful, I believe, is if on top of that anyway, you create native habitat for native species. Because ultimately, while some people are doing us the incredible favor of influencing politics and legislation, nature is going to get rid of us, regardless of our politics, if we do not cooperate soon with her. And I think this is possibly also a way of changing a mindset. One of the principles in permaculture is to strive towards more production on an individual level and less consumption. In other words, anything that you can switch to either doing without, or making yourself, or growing yourself, or assisting nature to do for you, is better than consuming and thereby putting demand on airplane, putting demand on an industrial system that is responsible for this mess. And that has created the individual who feels helpless, who has lost skills that we once had for self-sufficiency, who have lost the confidence to be human. And we're just cogs in a wheel. So, I believe with all my heart that Marcus Gustel and the 3-Zone Gardening have hit the nail on the head, basically saying that nature is far more powerful than we are, both to destroy us as well as to nurture us. We will do well to respect her, to help her regenerate, to give her dignity, and to allow her to do her job. I think this is one of the biggest problems in the human psyche. It's this idea that we should not just control, but actually replace nature's willingness to do a job with some ingenious innovative, mechanical, technical, IT, AI way to do it. It's insanity, because if you think about how complex and interlocked all of nature's cogs are. Oh, sorry, buddy. Somebody was sitting under my legs. Considering how complex that system is, we can't possibly hope to replace that, or to even assess all of the symbiotic relationships that a component carries out, how it intermeshes. We may see a couple of obvious ones, like how the nectar from flowers is vital to insects, how having access to water is a critical component to life. We may see a few obvious ones, but we may not know the full extent of it. In fact, I know we don't, and I know we never will. It is just too massively complex to understand. That's not to say we shouldn't understand it, but it is to say that nature has had billions of years to perfect this system, and it is highly arrogant of us to take even a small patch of it and assume that somehow we can do a better job. Of course, this attitude stems from tens of thousands, 10,000 years ago when we first started agriculture, where instead of taking what nature had to offer to sustain us, to give us joy, to give us shelter, we decided to take the job away from nature, to rape her, and use the components to build our own sustaining machine, self-sustaining, self as in human-sustaining machine. And we can see now how foolish this was, because we know that even in what seemed to be a simple task of domesticating some plants and some animals, we have created complete and utter chaos, destruction. And we've become actually far more vulnerable thanks to our dependence on an artificial system that can break down at any time, rather than the natural system, which is self-healing, self-sustaining, when we don't mess with it. I hope you enjoyed the tour, and I hope the talk inspired you. We can all do something. But it is time for radical action.